Spring 2016 has felt quite different to me, and I couldn't quite put my finger on why, but then I had a look through what I was watching and it hit me. The season is dominated by slice of life. Not including shorts, I've counted 8 different slice of life anime this season, which is a lot more than what we usually get, and it's not just cookie cutter cute girl stuff either. There's a lot of shows that are trying new things here. Slice of life is, in my opinion, one of the genres that the medium has excelled in the most. A large number of my favourites are slice of life, so I'm quite happy with this season. But despite slice of life being a genre that has such high possibility, it's also prone to sucking the life out of works, so many additions to the genre have been too dull or lackluster to create any real impact. It's a problem I have with a lot of slice of life anime. And from what I've seen so far, Spring 2016 has been a real mix of everything. So in this video I'm going to go through all the ones I've watched and hopefully give you an idea of what you might want to watch yourself. Let's start off with Unhappy because it's quite an interesting one and one that no one seems to be watching. At its core, it's very formulaic and plays off anime cliches a lot, but it uses many of those moments in its comedy. It has a pretty standard setup, school setting, bunch of girls, trivial plot points each episode, and it doesn't try and strive too far away from that, but what it does do is bring in some unique drops of comedy to keep things interesting. So there are small unique twists that come along with each character's cliches. For instance, the clumsy character is taken to the absurd when she literally breaks her bones in almost every scene, or the main character that has the cliche helpless love interest, except that love interest is a construction site sign. These little gags spice up what would have been a pretty dull set of characters. There's even some unexpected parody moments, like the Ava reference in episode 3. Unhappy relies on a lot of the comedy being quick and snappy. There's not a lot of depth here, so for the comedy to be successful it needs to be fast paced. Some of the jokes are presented with a kind of simplified cartoonish visual. Sometimes they even use manga-esque panels. This allows information to be delivered at a quicker pace, and some of the comedy can be really funny because of this. I think a lot of the charm in the series comes down to an acquired taste. If you like the kind of random absurdity of shows like the Going Home Club, then you might enjoy this one. But I understand that some people look for a bit more structure in their series, which Unhappy does lack. There's very little linking the events of each episode, and past some obvious character development there's very little progression of an overall narrative. All in all, it's not one of the stronger slice of life shows this season, since it only really has comedy to offer, but it certainly has some unique little moments. Straight off the bat, this is one that a lot of people just aren't going to get along with. It very much does what it says on the tin. It's an uneventful school comedy series that has almost no progression or goals. It plays heavily on its characters and its comedy without really creating an overall narrative. I say the characters are a big strong point for this series, the reason I go on to watch the next episode. So each episode switches the character focus, normally including our main two, Tanaka and Ota, adding in one or two of the many side characters. And these two are fairly interesting, offer a nice trunk for the series, but it's the secondary characters that really draw me in. They add a lot of diversity into an otherwise samey series. Comprised of twists on usual character cliches, their short screen time and high energy gives the show a much needed boost. Coming from the very non-comically low-key Tanaka-kun, the point of the show is that our protagonist is always sleeping, and other than give the show some marketable identity and a purpose for existing, he's rather pointless. I felt that the joke worked for maybe an episode or two, but there's only so many times "oh, he's fallen asleep" can work as a punchline. And past that one singular gag, he doesn't really bring anything to the series. Because of his fatigue, he can't muster up the strength to generate any charisma. The other characters all hold much more personality and comedic value. I'd quite happily watch Tanaka-kun without the inclusion of Tanaka-kun. Tanaka's repetitive jokes seem shoehorned into an otherwise engaging comedy. I understand the show's obvious need to maintain the main theme of the series, but he could have had a lot more layers to his character, which is the problem with many other aspects of the show as well. There's no clear overall message to the narrative, and subsequently no real reason to watch it in its entirety. I've really enjoyed my viewing of Tanaka-kun so far, but as an overall series, it doesn't really have a solid reason to be anything more than an arbitrary collection of events. I feel like I've given the show a quite harsh review, and I hope that it doesn't stop people from checking out at least a couple of episodes, because there are some really nice character moments in there. Sansha Sanyo is one that takes a while to acclimatise to just understand what exactly you're watching. But on reflection, I don't think understanding is something that the series is bothered about having. What really sets it aside from others this season is its unique and delicate use of visuals, specifically the character animation. They're portrayed in a kind of cartoonish yet elegant and expressive way, using rich character movements to enhance the comedy or just the characterization. A good scene to look at would be one of the opening scenes in episode 2. They present what is really a dull and pointless scene with such personality that it gives it purpose. I mean, look at this shot when a cat walks out of a bush. Each character is given a unique animated reaction to the situation. There's lots of movement and expression created in an otherwise forgettable moment. And it doesn't just end at character animations either. As the show progresses, it visually connects all of its scenes. For example, this transition in episode 2. Now the visuals are a highlight for the series, and I think on their own a reason to check it out, but the rest of the series is up for debate, to be honest. The show is almost purely comedy driven, stopping occasionally to offer some narrative development, but the majority of each episode I watched was all conversational comedy, which was at times hard to follow. There's a large cast of characters, many of which look indistinguishable and lack variety in their personalities. I sometimes found it hard to keep up with these conversations for this reason, which kind of disconnected me with the series, and due to there being no real narrative either, I just felt pushed away by the show's lack of consideration for myself. A little structure to the jokes and episodes could have gone a long way to making me feel more involved. So Kuma Miko is a contender for not only my favourite slice of life of the seasons, but one of my favourite shows of the bunch. It does heavily rely on its comedy, especially for the first 3 or 4 episodes, but I feel the show develops an interesting coming of age narrative as it progresses, without losing sight of its comedy roots. And the comedy is very unique on its own. It's definitely an acquired taste, but if it's your kind of humour, they pull it off fantastically. Essentially, the comedy of Kuma Miko comes from making a spectacle out of the mundane, drawing out scenarios far longer than you would expect and giving huge focus to the most trivial of events. A good example would be the shopping episode, whole episode dedicated to blowing up a trivial situation. It cleverly paces out the events and gives them a sort of impact that they really shouldn't have. You start finding just the circumstances of what's happening quite funny. When given time to think about a joke like this while it's happening, you start to find the humour that lies past the basic outline of the joke. It's like a roller coaster of funniness that happens throughout the episode. Or the repetitive nature of the outfit episode. It's initially funny and then it becomes annoying and repetitive, then it comes full circle as it's taken to the absurd level and becomes funny again. Like I said, it's quite an acquired taste, but I really find the humour in the utter bizarreness. As I mentioned, it doesn't just play off its comedy. While it does take a few episodes to kick in, the coming of age story that's initially established really grows. I started to feel a genuine attachment with the characters, past their comedic values. Even elements such as the village that they live in started to feel engaging, building a world that you can really connect with. Slowly and subtly, Kuma Miko creates a charming slice of life story on top of that already interesting comedic style. Unlike a lot of the shows I've mentioned here, Kuma Miko does produce overarching themes. It gives me a reason to come back every week. Flying Witch is probably the closest to the traditional slice of life anime. It's got a very slow, mellow pace to it, with a soft atmosphere and just a general cozy feel. And it never strides too far in any direction. The stories are always very grounded and the characters never do anything too outrageous. But that's what it strives to do. Maybe not as ambitious with its comedy as, say, Kuma Miko, or as experimental with its narrative elements, but it does nail the basics of slice of life. And sometimes being excellent in the basics can land you further than being adequate in something more advanced. And Flying Witch is a good example of this. Let's talk about the comedy too, because I think it deserves a lot of praise. Most of the comedy in Flying Witch revolves around the viewer's expectations of the characters, and how they behave. Punchlines are almost always about what happens to someone or how they react to something. For example, the broom joke in the first episode works not because of what's happening, but how the characters react to it happening. Another good example would be the bizarre mandrake scene. Everything is presented in such a normal way, but the characters react in the complete opposite fashion. This creates a sort of fun quirkiness. There's a lot of slice of life to take in here. Some fantastic, some not so much, and there's still some that I've yet to check out. Bukuon, High School Fleet, and Shonen Maid are all titles that I've yet to watch, so let me know in the comments if any of them are worth watching. So let's recap on what the season is offering so far. For myself, Kuma Miko and Flying Witch are the highlights. Kuma Miko has such a unique comedic style and characters that I can really engage with, and Flying Witch has such a character to its world and narrative. They've offered such an impressive set of attributes so far, I'm excited to see how they conclude. And even the shows that didn't necessarily blow me away still had some interesting qualities. Like I love the quirkiness of Unhappy and the strong characterization of some of Tanaka-kun's cast. So I think we've had a really positive season so far. And there's so much more I want to talk about, but unfortunately that's all for now. Please do post your favourites from the season in the comments so I can check them out. And if you enjoyed this video, please do click the like button and share it around. And if you want to, you can click the subscribe button as well. Cheers.